Welcome to the Drunk Linux User. I am Len. I am the Drunk Linux User. And no ranting, no raving, no words of dire doom and gloom. Today we're talking about little odd how-tos in the Linux world. And if you happen to be a GNOME user, GNOME user for those purists, you'll have noticed that over the years that the GNOME developers have taken away the ability to see the icons of certain of your applications up at the top panel. Now, in Linux world, we call that a panel. In Windows world, I believe you call it a taskbar. But anyway, they've gone missing over the last several incarnations of GNOME, and people kind of miss that. So there have been things that have been devised called extensions that allow the panel to be adjusted to fit the needs of the user and not the developer. So this article that we're talking about right here is how to get that top indicator panel back going for you. And it's very, very simple. If you are using the GNOME desktop, then you can use this extension, which I'll show you here in just a second. It is called App Indicator and Case Status Notifier Item Support. And what it does is it gives you back the little icons up at the top for applications that you may have closed the window but still want to have access to. For example, I use something called Dead Beef for my musical perusal. Dead Beef down here, and I'm using KDE, but this is the same kind of thing. I launch it, the icon stays down here. If I close the window, icon is still here, meaning the program's still running, but you don't see it indicated over here as running. I can go ahead and click here, and it brings it right back. It's just a nice way of kind of keeping your taskbar in Windows or your panel in Linux clean. If you want to just close the whole thing out, you just quit from here, or you can go to the panel icon and do the same thing, quit. Okay. Same principle in GNOME as it is in KDE and in XFCE. Well, the odd part about it is that XFCE and KDE, which is more modern, have this ability, but GNOME has had it taken out for some reason. I don't know why. People want it enough that these indicator icons and the extensions were created. So if you want to go to the GNOME extension page, it's extensions.gnome.org. If you're using this only works, this extension only works if you're using GNOME and a newer version of GNOME as well. So there will be a button over here that'll just say on and off. Click it on, it'll ask you, do you want to install? Click yes, boom, and then you have your icons across the top. It's a nice little solution. And the GNOME extensions, by the way, they have some really, really cool things. You can add your own. You can add user themes that you can find off that pling that I showed you before. You can change application menus. You can do all kinds of different things. One of the things that I really enjoy from this page is the sound input and output device chooser. This gives you more granular control over your devices that you're using for microphones or for listening back on headphones versus your speakers on your desktop, things like that. So this is really, really nice page. There are great extensions here that'll help with your productivity or just to make your life easier in the GNOME environment. Now, I don't have an iPhone, but if I did, and I probably never will, I would consider looking at this particular web page to find out how I can use my iPhone as an external drive and perhaps maybe copy back and forth some music or maybe some pictures or something along that line, documents perhaps. But it isn't just as simple as plugging it in like an Android into a Linux box, and then lo and behold, you select file transfer on your Android phone and you have access to the files through your Linux system. With iPhones, it is different. You have to install a little extension called libimobile device first. Once you get that installed, and there are different ways of doing this. If you're on Arch, you'll be able to find this in probably the AUR, or maybe in your community edition as well. But this is talking about if you're using a Debian-based system. Very, very simple, and just follow these commands and you'll be able to access your iPhone storage. So give it a shot if you're interested in it, and hopefully it'll work out for you. Again, I can't vouch because I don't have an iPhone. I ran into a little problem the other day when I decided to give Endeavour OS another go, and that's the fact that I have one hard drive with Linux Mint, and I have another hard drive that has Ubuntu, and I decided to put the Endeavour OS on the Ubuntu hard drive, which is my really big super fast SSD card. When I did that, I lost the listing at boot of all of the different operating systems. The only thing you could see was Endeavour OS. So go to Endeavour OS. And I found out this isn't just particular to Endeavour. It can happen with Manjaro or just about any other Arch derivative, or even Arch itself. So if you have this problem, come over here and take a look at the instructions that are given. This is a very, very simple, very, very, very simple process. And all you have to do is just go into this file, make a quick little change, and then you'll run this command in the terminal. And if OSPROBER is installed on your system, you want that thing to say false in there on that line, because this is telling it to disable it. You want it enabled. That way the probe can take a look at all the different hard drives, find all the different operating systems, and list it in your Grub system. This particular line right here is going to force Grub to load that information in so that at boot you can find it. Now, that's really, really cool, and it worked like a charm, okay? But when it came out with mine, because I have so many different operating systems on different partitions and drives, I had a list like this long. I don't know if you can see this, but this long, that had everything from Endeavour, and then there was Ubuntu, and then Linux Mint, you get the idea. So it was cluttered. It was a little confusing the first couple times, but there is something that you can use. Use caution with this, though. It's called Grub Customizer, and I have used it before, and I've never had a problem. But I take my time, and I don't do anything to try to really jeopardize my system. But things can happen, so back up your data, okay? This is the Grub menu as it pretty well looks normally if you have Grub set up and it's you have it set up alongside of maybe Windows or another Linux version as it's showing here. Now, with mine, it was just showing Endeavour OS at the top. Nothing else was at the bottom. So, after using the OSPROBER, which I'll get to on another page here in just a minute with more step-by-steps on how to use that. The Grub Customizer, you can find this in both Debian-based and Arch-based systems, is great. And these are the instructions on how to install it, not only for Fedora-based type systems, but Arch and Debian. So once you install it, you find it, and you can change the boot order. So say, for example, you want to keep your Linux Mint as your primary boot in the sequence, but you want to add something else to it. Well, that something else may put itself up at top. For example, Endeavour did. And that's fine for now because that's what I'm using primarily right now. You can move this. For example, if I wanted to use Ubuntu instead of Windows first, I would just highlight it, and then I would use an arrow to click it in the order that I want it to be. Now with mine, I had all of these different operating systems and all these little sub choices that you can use. I didn't want to see all that, so what I did was, for example, this was not under a different folder. This was all off to the side, right up underneath Ubuntu, so it all looked like it was a different actual option choice that you would want to pick from, and you don't necessarily, not unless you have to troubleshoot. So what I did was I clicked on Advanced Options, for example, with Ubuntu, and then under Edit, there's a way to be able to go in and create a subfolder. So when you create the subfolder, then the item that you've clicked is in that subfolder. Click on the next one, move it up, and it keeps going into that folder until you get to the next operating system, or in this case, just leave the UEFI firmware settings alone at the bottom, just like Ubuntu and Windows or whatever else you have on your system. Very, very simple. And then when you go to save, it reorganizes everything in your system, and then when you reboot the next time, you'll see how nice and pretty it is. So it's very, very nice. Now you can do different things like change the background of Grub if you don't like it is kind of boring normally. It's just kind of white text on a black background. Or in Ubuntu's case, sometimes I think they still use the purple background and white text, whatever. You can change it. I don't bother with it. It's usually up for just about 5 seconds for me. But you can change the length of time that it's on there. And just be careful about everything, all right? I don't want to see you lose your system just because you wanted to play around a little bit. Take your time, get to understand what you're working with first before you actually use it. So this page right here talks about using the dual boot Arch Linux with another Linux OSPROBER situation. And there's a video if you're more visually inclined, or there's step-by-step instructions. This looks horrible, I know, but basically you're just reading what you're going to do. You're going to take this, you're going to copy it, you're going to put it in the terminal, hit enter, put in your password, boom, the system starts working. And then again, copy, paste, enter, and you're done. You might have to do this again if you update your kernel. The kernel is the sort of like the heart of the Linux system. I didn't have to. As a matter of fact, today I actually had to update the kernel in Arch in my Endeavor system. And when I went to reboot, everything was still in place. If that's the case, you're golden. If not, come back, use Grub Customizer or use OSPROBER if you happen to lose your other operating systems, whatever you need. It's really easy. It is not hard. So this guy's got a great webpage, by the way. Average Linux User. He's got some great tutorials, great information. Highly recommend him. He's got a great page. And now for something completely different. Have you ever wished you could get rid of Facebook, or just get away from it for a while so it's not constantly hitting your phone, or you just don't want to even have the temptation to use your computer to go to Facebook? I know I do all the time. If it weren't for the fact that I have family that we basically only get to see pictures of each other on Facebook, because I guess email's too hard or just not as convenient, or they've made it about as simple as you can possibly get. My wife and I and our son from China, we use something similar to Facebook. It's called WeChat. It is Chinese based. Yes, I know. So if you want to get away from Facebook, there are certain people that just like to take a break from technology for a while. This article is really nice because not only does it tell you how you can achieve this for just taking a short break, but also completely removing your account from Facebook. That way you can download any pictures or anything that you've written over the ages, your words of wisdom, right? You can do that as well and deactivate. It does take, I believe, about 15 days for it to actually take hold, so that there's nothing left. So if you do change your mind after a couple weeks, I think maybe I want to go back to it, you can always log back in within that time frame, and you'll be able to recover your account. Again, I wish I could get away from Facebook, and maybe one day I will. But this talks about it, and it also gives you reasons why you may want to choose one over the other. If you're just wanting to get away, deactivate. If you want to just get away from it, then you want to delete. So just remember there's a choice there for you, and you can choose because it's your account, right? Okay, your life. All right, so see, no ranting, no raving, no dire predictions of doom and gloom today. We're going to end with our words of wisdom. Don't drive drunk. Don't drink and drive. Don't go to Amazon or eBay and buy a bunch of crap you don't need because you're all buzzed up and you think, oh, this is cool. It probably isn't. Go juice this day. Go juice this day. It's raining. It's nasty. It's not even a nice rain. Bottoms up. Later, dudes. Oh, I can feel the power running through me now.